Good evening and welcome to round 3 of the Nations Cup here in Valencia. I am Chris Kavaney, your host for this series, and after just 2 rounds, yes just 2, we've had a heck of a lot of action and chaos already. First off was in Silverstone, secondly in Dijon in France, and now we're in the sunny delights of Spain in Valencia Ricardo Tormo. This track is certainly known for its MotoGP history, and it also did host Formula E, but don't worry, no batteries are going to randomly die early here, as it's the Nations Cup. There are 4 races to be won today. Firstly, we're going to start looking at the sprints. But firstly, we'll show Division 2, and we'll just remind ourselves what the standings are. And Paddle Award is out in front in the standings for Division 2, with Sasha Fennestra as the previous winner at Dijon on 34 points, 17 points behind him. And it's a really close fight from there. Felix Rosenqvist, Felipe Albuquerque, Antonio Felix da Costa, all very, very close proximity. Even Robert Wickens as well with Canada. We have Raffaele Marcello, Sebastian Buemi. Buemi particularly needs to have some form of showing this weekend. Then we have Jimmy Winkup with Australia on 17 points, Leonardo Forlaroli on 16, Marcus Ericsson, who's been rather disappointing considering where his teammate is, on 16 points, James Hinchcliffe on 14, Kevin Magnussen on 3rd. Then you've got the Monaco, Stefan Raquelme of 12 points, Felipe Nasr, Arthur Leclerc, Nico Verone, Will Power, again a bit of a disappointing show. Then you have the first of the South African team, you could argue disappointing, Kelvin van der Linde, Antonio Fuoco, Christian Lundgaard, Sheldon van der Linde, Bruno Senna. Then the 3 drivers with no points so far, Maheve Regunathan, Rafael Villa-Gomez and Lorraine Goddecain. And then we look towards the nation standings, and Portugal are out in front only by 9 points to Mexico. Sweden again close behind. Switzerland, despite having some interesting results, are still in the hunt. Argentina with a great outing last weekend with 43 points, with Canada as well. Australia 25, Italy 24, Monaco 22, Denmark 20, Brazil 13, South Africa just 11 points, and India on zilch. But remember, from here, of course, the new BOP settings have been set in place, so Portugal are going to get the max hit, Mexico the second max, Sweden 3rd, all the way down to 6th place. So Australia and South are going to hopefully get some good results this weekend. With all that stuff out of the way, we can now look towards the actual sprint grid that we've got for us. And regarding those teams that would love to have a good start this weekend, both Monaco cars are 1st and 2nd for the sprint grid. Arthur Leclerc's from Stefan Raquelme, Sebastian Buemi in 3rd, Felipe Nasr in 4th, Sheldon van der Linde in 5th, Kevin Magnussen 6th, Christian Lundgaard 7th, Jamie Winkup in 8th, Robert Wickens 9th, and Felix Rosenqvist rounding out the top 10. He'll get to start pole for the feature should there be a clean race. Then we got 11th place with Raffaele Marcello, Felipe Albuquerque 12th, Paddle Award 13th, Will Power 14th, Bruno Senna in 15th, Nico Verone 16th, Vera Ragunathan for the Indians 17th, Marcus Ericsson in 18th, Leonardo Forlaroli for Italy in 19th place, which is not a particularly good spot for them to be in. And then you got Kevin van der Linde at 20th, Sasha Fennestra at 21st, considering his outings in Dijon. Quite a different result. Then we got James Hinchcliffe for 22nd, Antonio Fuoco in 23rd, Rafael Villa-Gomez 24th, Antonio Felix da Costa, quite a disappointing qualifying. But then again, he's on the max BOP hit, so that could be explanation for that. And then you got Lorraine Goddecain bringing up the rear in 26th. Now with all of that, let's get the first race underway. Ryan Ferris, take it away.
Here we are for the first sprint race of the day. This is Division 2, and the lights are coming on now here at the Valencia circuit. And 5 lights are on, and 5 lights are off, and it's a good getaway there from Leclerc, but Raquelme's coming up the inside, but here comes Nasr. Nasr up the inside into the lead. So Felipe Nasr of Brazil takes the lead here. And there's a few more shufflings going on in the background. That's Sheldon van der Linde, sorry. As there's a big old collision going on. I think that's on the back straight, is it? So we come into the start-finish straight. There's someone there from Argentina who's lost their rear wing. And oh, there's a big collision in the background. That's Bruno Senna by the looks of things. And one of the Australian cars. I think that's Will Power. And so Sasha Fenestras there of Argentina loses the rear wing, and I think that's maybe Pato Award of Mexico there, and then it's a hit there from Team India, and that looks like Lorraine Goddecain who's put Fenestras out there. So here's Bruno Senna, gets a bit sandwiched into turn 1. Fenestras has already lost his rear wing. And it's Ragunathan. There's Bruno Senna going up into the barriers. But no damage there for the Brazilian. So he collects the back of Fenestraz, but doesn't cause the lasting damage, goes flying up into the air. So here's Fenestraz. You're about to see Bruno Senna go flying over the car. Oh no, that's Bruno Senna actually up ahead. And it's the accordion effect of the Senna incident that has caused Fenestraz to be rear-ended. So, out of the race. But meanwhile, up front, it's been a while, but here we go. Nazar up front from Leclerc and Riquelme, with Sheldon van der Linde in 4th and Jamie Whincup in 5th for Australia. So, good showing so far for Australia. They've not had the best of the starts to the season. As we see penalties dished out there. And a couple of penalties, in fact. Narain Karthikeyan coming out with a disqualification as 6 points to his licence. Sebastian Buemi making a move there, trying to get up the inside of Jamie Whincup, but unable to do so through the Campos corner as they come through onto the start-finish straight to complete a lap, and that looks like Riquelme going through on Leclerc into second position, and manages to do so. That also looked like Marcello trying to make some moves up there in the background. But on board with Leclerc in third position, and a lot of people refer to this circuit as a bit of a go-kart circuit, but expanded. But it has been known to cause a bit of drama over the years. And Riquelme going about trying to catch up to Nasser. So under a second, just shy of 9/10 between the pair of them. And it's just all about getting through this technical section. Through the middle sector they come. And then around the Nieto curve. But Riquelme's spotted a problem. So Riquelme is being told to box, and yeah, he's dropping like a fly. He's gone into the pit lane. He'd managed to get that gap down to half a second. Nazar, as a result, takes the fastest lap, and I think Riquelme would have probably taken that fastest lap for the fact that he's had some form of issue. As we look back now to Sheldon van der Linde, who, in the meantime, has actually got through into second position ahead of Leclerc. So, second position for the South African. This has allowed Nazar to get nearly a 2-second advantage in the lead, and this will be big news for Brazil, who've had a bit of an average start to the season, particularly Nazar, who's been doing most of the point scoring for the team. Comes through to complete this final sector as they come down to the Campos curve. Van der Linde still holding on to that second position, but Leclerc has not given up on this. And through there was change of position. I think that was possibly Wickens actually. So that was Wickens on Lundgaard, but Lundgaard's coming back on the inside into turn 1. And now Wickens has got Will Power all over the back of him now. He's going up the inside into the Doohan corner. This is a good showing now from Power, who's, again, not had the best of starts of the season, but he's finding himself in the points. But here is, once again, Arthur Leclerc stalking Sheldon van der Linde. I think pretty much Leclerc was wrong-footed by his teammate coming into pit lane a bit, and I think that's what allowed van der Linde to come through. because it definitely seems like Leclerc has still got the pace to stay with him. But he's in a situation where he's going to have to make a decisive move because he's got Whincup not far behind him. And it's a problem for Arthur Leclerc now. So both Monegasque drivers suffering with issues early on in this race. That promotes Whincup, well, Australia, into P3. He's got Magnussen on his tail though, so he's got to have his wits about him, as he's not within a second of Van der Linde in front, which will give him a bit of a slipstream, but still, once again, good showing here from Team Australia. And Riquelme, on those fresher tyres and problem fixed, setting the fastest lap of the race, but obviously outside the top 15 at the moment. They come streaming through this middle sector. And here's Leclerc, fresh out of pit lane on his first flying lap, and already having a few lockups along the way, obviously pushing to try and make up that gap that he's lost out on. And both Monegasque drivers, with Riquelme and Leclerc, both at the back of the field, and got quite a lot of work to do to catch up to the next drivers, let alone get to the points, which is quite a way away for these guys. As Will Power goes up the inside and takes 8th position off of Robert Wickens, so 8th position for Will Power, and he's now going to set about Rosenqvist, who's a little bit further up the road with a 2.2 second advantage. Oh, and there's some more shuffling going on through the midfield, and that's a smoking car in the background. Smoke pouring out of what looks to be, again, one of the Team Argentina cars. So that is Nico Varone. So it's been a terrible day for Argentina so far. And hopefully they're going to be wishing they're going to have a better feature race. So Varone gets towed away. Engine problem, as we could see. But back to the action. It's Whincup still in 3rd position, trying to chase after Sheldon Van der Linde. And starting to pull away a bit from Magnussen, although still 6/10 between Whincup and Magnussen. So it's not over yet. And it's Lundgaard coming in for an electrical issue now. So, pretty much dropping like flies through the field, it seems, with various issues. We look to the rear end of Ericsson, but here is Robert Wickens, and he's regrouped and is still all over the back of Will Power. So it looks like the Canadian is going to be lining himself up to retake that 8th position off of the Australian. Doesn't manage it through Campos, but he's going to have a look, and a good slipstream coming in. Sorry, actually no, on the wrong section of the circuit there. That was actually the end of the back straight. But here is Felipe Nasser, who's got the commanding lead of nearly 3 seconds. And Wickens has got an issue now. He's got a slow puncture. So Robert Wickens, who, well, was challenging for that 8th position, he's now going to miss out and have a puncture, and is now ducked into pit lane. That now promotes the likes of Marcello and Fuoco. So Fuoco now into the points in 10th position for Italy. Looking back to Riquelme, you can see the two Monegasque drivers have pretty much got the length of the start-finish straight to be able to catch up to the back end of the field. Wickens is still in the pits at the moment, so they've managed to make up one position there, but still 9 seconds till they knock on to the top 20 for the two Monegasque drivers. Back to Whincup, who has still got Magnussen for company. And it is a real mix and match of a circuit this is. So through this middle sector you'll probably find that the drivers or the cars set up with a higher downforce are going to have a bit more of a benefit. And then they come round onto this back straight, and then you'll find that the drivers who have invested a bit more, or the teams who have invested a bit more in straight line speed, will reap the rewards and the benefits. But still, Sheldon Van der Linde, who's pretty much in low man's land now, he's still stayed 2 seconds ahead of Whincup, but he's 3 seconds away from Nasser. It's whether or not Nasser is going to have the tyres towards the end of the race, as although this is a sprint race, it's still just about long enough to see some tyre degradation towards the end of it. Generally no pit stops in a sprint race unless drivers have issues like we've seen already. It's come streaming through. This is still Whincup just ahead of Magnussen. Magnussen keeping the gap fairly similar as Van der Linde goes up the inside of Fuoco to take that 10th position, but Fuoco is going to hang it out around the outside, but has to relinquish that 10th place, and so we're now on for double points for the South African team. Here's Antonio Felix da Costa, who has suffered massively as a result of the balanced performance. He's had to come pretty much from the back of the grid. He was on the back row. He's up into 17th position, but still got work to do to get some points in this race. Nasser, who's pretty much keeping the gap fairly similar to Van der Linde. He's eked out another 10th to the South African, and here's Villa Gomez having a look up the inside and taking 19th position off of Ericsson, so Ericsson not having the best of days either, and that is actually Kavaney, who obviously, as we know, has been disqualified for that early incident. Wickens now with the fastest lap, obviously recovering after that puncture, and seemed like Canada were on some good points. Nasser still gradually adding a 10th here and there onto his lead, and here's Buemi. So Buemi on the back of Albuquerque for 5th position, but he has also got Rosenquist all over the back of him, so three-way battle here for the top 5. Buemi not quite having the speed down the back straight, but it seems he's definitely got the downforce through the corners, so through the twisties we may see a move from the Swiss driver. But still on board, going well, head down, the team are saying to Felipe Nasser. Obviously, for some Sky Sports Watch viewers, they may remember him referred to as Fred Nasser, not to be confused with Felipe Massa. Here's the team radio from Sheldon Van der Linde, and they're saying, problem with the car and retire it. And there he is, so he's pulling off out of 2nd position. So Sheldon Van der Linde, who's again not had the best of luck this season. Some will obviously remember him creating his own issues by going into the back of the pole sitter in the last time out. But that promotes Whincup into 2nd and Magnussen in 3rd. So still I was going to say a close battle for second, but it seems like Magnussen's dropped off the back of Whincup now. And he's falling into the clutches of this Albuquerque, Buemi and Power battle. In fact, Power's managed to get through on Rosenquist. So, Whincup, has he got an issue now? Because he appears to be reeled in by, getting reeled in a little bit by Magnussen now. Obviously there seemed to be some sort of lull, whether or not Magnussen was taking a bit of a breather, looking after the tyres, letting them cool down a bit, and then he's going for another attack now. But Nazar has pulled out another 3 seconds pretty much. Obviously, as a result of Van der Linde retiring, so that's 6.7 seconds to Whincup. Here is Magnussen, who's again having another go at closing in onto the back of Whincup. He's got Albuquerque less than a second behind him, and Buemi is 3/10 off the back of Albuquerque. Here is Marcello. Looks as though he's struggling to find a gear through that middle section. Still with Marcello as we're back on board with Magnussen, who's starting to eke a little bit into Whincup. But here is the battle against Vinny Gomez. Having a slight moment going wide and a loss of concentration and losing the front wing. Just trying to push the envelope a little bit too much, and so he's going to have to pit for a new front wing. That's allowing the rest of the field through, and that's the two monogas drivers coming through there of Riquelme and Leclerc, so they came up into the top 20. Albuquerque's now saying that there's something odd with the car and he's going to have to pit. They're all having issues here. He has, if I'm quite correct, he's dropped outside the top 15 now. So now we see a few more drivers. So Da Costa, who started at the back of the field, is now up to 15th. Bruno Senna having a little issue, but he's now 10th. So we now have Brazil bookends in the points at the moment. He's just ahead of Pato O'Ward. Senna, who's quite the qualifier actually. He's still to this day got lap records for Monaco and a few other circuits from the old GP2 days. Here we are with Magnussen in third position and Buemi catching up onto the back of him for that final position on the podium. Here's Whincup, who's got a comfortable advantage now to Magnussen. That mid-race charge that Magnussen was attempting hasn't quite worked out. Nazar still comfortable, nearly 7 seconds as Albuquerque's trying to make his way through on the field. So through on Lundgaard for 21st position. Obviously it's not going to account for much as only the top 10 score points in this race. Words of encouragement there from the Denmark team to Magnussen. Still holding on to that third position, but for how long, as Buemi is now within 0.3 of a second to him. field, and that's Kelvin van der Linde in 8th position. And this is the battle for 3rd position now, so Buemi all over the back of Magnussen now. And that's O'Ward going up the inside of Senna now for P10. So that was at the Doohan corner as we look back to the battle for 3rd position as they come down the back straight. Here's Will Power under pressure from Rosenqvist for 5th position. Obviously Rosenqvist was a little bit further up and had some sort of issue somewhere in the opening laps which allowed him to lose 1 or 2 positions. He's now starting to regroup in these final few laps, and they are running out of laps now as they come to complete lap 16. So 3 laps to go of this sprint race. And Buemi not really got an answer there for Magnussen down the straight. They really haven't got much top speed as they've gone a lot on downforce, and it really shows, as you can see. That's Rakelmi battling away with Ericsson there in 17th position. He's now put himself under pressure from Wickens, who's also recovering through the field. But back towards that 3rd place battle, and again Buemi all over the back of Magnussen through the corners, but we'll get onto a straight and we'll see that Danish car start to pull away from the Swiss car. We are on 2 laps to go. Again, Buemi not close enough to challenge into turn 1. Whincup still comfortable in that 2nd position, so this is going to be a great showing here as we look at Wickens going up the inside of Rakelmi now. But here is Felipe Nasser, 7.3 seconds ahead of Whincup. Nice and easy, just has to cruise round this final lap and a bit. Bagging some decent points for Brazil. Obviously Senna missing out on that final point at the moment as it stands, and it looks like O'Ward's managed to put 1.4 seconds into the Brazilian. As we look to Whincup, and in the background again, glued together for this 3rd place battle, it's Magnussen and Buemi. Rosenqvist still hounding Power for that 4th place position as we come to start the final lap. So here we go, Nasser leading, Whincup in 2nd, and Magnussen still holding on to that 3rd position ahead of Buemi. And it just seems like the Swiss driver, getting my S's the wrong way around, just doesn't have an answer. As we see Wickens pulling on through, obviously fresher tyres, and that's Villagomez retiring. So Villagomez out on the final lap as a transmission issue. But here's Felipe Nasser, a commanding lead of 7.3 seconds. He's coming through into the final sector now. He rounds the final corner and comes down the start-finish straight. And Felipe Nasser comes across the line to win here in the sprint race for Division 2 here in Valencia. Whincup comes second. That's a brilliant result for Australia, and it looks to be Magnussen holding on to third. Power also finishing fifth, so all round a good day so far for Australia. Fuoco in 9th and O'Ward getting the final points there in 10th. As we see the final drivers coming through, obviously Kavaney with the race ban, I believe, or the disqualification, so he won't be finishing in that position. Not that it's going to make too much difference to anyone behind, because they're still not going to be scoring points. But there's confirmation there. Felipe Nasser finishing first with Jamie Whincup in second, and Kevin Magnussen in third, Sebastian Buemi in fourth, with Will Power in fifth, Felix Rosenquist sixth, Rafael Machado is seventh, Kelvin van der Linde eighth, Pato Award in ninth, and Bruno Senna actually, as a result of penalties, has actually got 10th position in the final point. Fornarelli 11th, Ragunathan in 12th, and Hinchcliffe in 13th. Antonio Felix da Costa finishes in 14th from the back of the grid. Wickens managed to come through into 15th with Ericsson 16th, Raquelme 17th, Leclerc 18th, Albuquerque 19th, and Lungard 20th. Fuoco 21st, and Villa Gomez still classified but 2 laps down from that transmission failure. Sheldon van der Linde with the brake failure in 23rd, Verone with the water leak, and Fenestraz in 25th with the accident. And obviously, Narain Karthikeyan being disqualified as a result of that Fenestraz accident. And after all that, it is back over to Chris.
Well, that now makes it 5 different race winners from 5 races in Division 2. Congratulations to Felipe Nasser on the sprint victory. Again, well done on Jimmy Whincup on the race. And what happened to the Monaco team? Honestly, that was quite comical, having both of their cars having issues literally in the first 4 laps of the race. Very, very disastrous for the team owner. But then again, it's just the sprint. The feature has more points to it, so they could say something about that, I suppose. But now we can look ahead towards Division 1, and we can see the driver standings before we go into that race, and we see that Philip Hansen's got quite a healthy lead so far, with 56 points, 39 points, and Alex Palou 70 behind, Scott Dixon 31 points, Jack Aitken very impressively on 29 points, Naoki Yamamoto doing a very solid job on 28 points, Paul DeResta with 23, Shane Van Gisbergen on 21, along with Nick De Vries with 21 points. Then we've got Andrew Lotter with a very, very amazing drive in Dijon on 20 points. Then we've got Carl Larson 18th, René Rast 15th, you've got Joseph Newgarden as well on 15th. It's kind of a disappointing start to the season for him. And then we've got Daniel Gaudet on 13th. And then there is James Collado on 11 points, Simon Pagenaud on 10 points, Elfyn Evans on 9, Sebastian Bourdais on 8 points. You could say for France that's quite a disappointing start, especially with the home Grand Prix that they've just left. Not many points for them. Then Alex Dunn on 7, Sally Stuvik on 7, Ella Lloyd on 6, Tadasuke Magino on 5, Max Hart on 5, Dries Van Toor on 5 as well. Then we've got Larry Tenvoorde at 2. You could argue that's a bit disappointing. Mark Housens on 1, Nathan Libata Navaragul on 1, and then we have, bringing up the rear, Vidya Hicks on nothing. And then how that looks for the nation standings is that England still has a great lead on 67 points, and 3 teams all on 52 points. Spain, New Zealand and Scotland, Germany on 35, USA and Japan both on 33, Netherlands on 23, France with 18, Wales 15, Ireland 12, Thailand 8 and Belgium 6. But before we go into seeing what the sprint grid looks like, we must address that there is going to be a driver change into this race weekend for Division 1 at England, because James Collado, who's been a bit of a naughty boy, already amassing 12 points amazingly into this round, he has to be replaced automatically by the reserve driver, which will be Alex Lynn. Now we've seen all of that, we can see what the sprint grid looks like for the upcoming race, and we have Scott Dixon starting on pole for this one, Simon Pagenaud in second place, Joseph Newgarden in third, Daniel Gaudet in fourth, Shane Van Gisbergen in fifth, then we have Naoki Yamamoto in sixth, Carl Larson in seventh, René Rast in eighth, Nick De Vries in ninth, and Sebastian Bourdais in 10th, Sandy Stuvik with 11th, Andre Lotterer in 12th, Paul DeResta in 13th, Dries Van Toor 14th, Tadasuke Magino 15th, Larry Tenvoorde 16th, Philip Hansen with his max BOP taking a bit of a hit in qualifying on 17th place. We've got Ella Lloyd in 18th, 19th Alex Palou, 20th is Alex Dunn, Natalie Lee went to Navarrigal in 21st, Max Hart 22nd, Elfin Evans 23rd, Alex Lynn, the new introduction going into this race weekend, in 24th with a heavy BOP car and new to the car. That might be an explanation. We've got Jack Aitken in 25th and then Mark Housens in 26th. And now it's Division 1 sprint time, so I'm going to hand you back now to Ryan Ferris.
Now, after an exciting race over in Div 2, it's over to Div 1 for yet again another sprint race. The lights are now coming on. We've got 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's now lights out. Dixon with a good start, Pagenaud not so well, and Newgarden's come around the outside into second position. And in fact, Juncker managed to get through on Pagenaud as well. So a great start there from Dixon, and Newgarden's followed through. And quite the gap there, actually, to Juncker. And then again, looks like more damage in the background and a real bottleneck into that second corner. And it looks like it's Andre Losserer who's lost his rear wing this time round. So that's pretty much race over for him, and he's going to have to limp his way back to the pit lane for a new rear wing. And it looks like it was Tim Ford who was involved in that incident with Lotterer. But meanwhile, at the front, no further action being called on that incident, but at the front, it is Dixon from Newgarden. So, regular sparring partners from the IndyCar paddock. Pagenaud making his way back through on Juncker into third position. But again, there's quite some gap between the pair of them. Over 2 seconds. There is Stuvik making his way up, trying to take 7th place off of René Rast, but that hasn't quite worked out, and that's allowed De Vries onto the back of him now. But Dixon getting into his stride already, which is not what Newgarden wants to see, because as we know for Dixon, he's a bit of a machine, a bit of a computer almost, with his metronomic pace once he gets into that rhythm. So Dixon setting about his regular business as he looks to extend over a second over Newgarden. Newgarden still just about hanging on within that second. Meanwhile, Pagenaud somehow has lost out. Juncker and Yamamoto have got both past him. Here's Ella Lloyd going slow. So what is going on here for the Welsh driver? I'm not really seeing anything at the moment, but hopefully we'll get some confirmation through shortly. As you can see, all the field's gone through and Lotterer is still not to be seen. There's a transmission failure there for the Welsh driver. Back up front, it is still Dixon. Newgarden's managed to pull the 10th back on the New Zealand driver. This is Team Belgium that we're looking at the moment. And I think this is Goosen down in 24th, following Jack Aitken, and that's De Vries going slow. So an issue there for De Vries. So De Vries out, and that's an electrical failure. So here is Yamamoto, who's managed to get his way up into third now. So he's past Pagenaud, he's past Juncker, up into third. He's got quite some margin to make up though for the lead 2. And that's Goosen saying that he's got electrical issues now, so he's having to pull into the box. Much like the League 2 race, this looks like this could be fairly attritional, as Pagenaud is now lining up once again Junkadea. Newgarden is still keeping 8/10 to Dixon. Is Larson and Paul di Resta. So Larson just going through into 9th place for di Resta, and Bourdais is lurking behind the pair of them, so he's looking to make up a position and a possible point on di Resta. Here's Dixon still leading, and he's still not quite shaken Newgarden off the back of him. Newgarden is still just about hanging on to that second. But Yamamoto just over 3 seconds behind Newgarden, so no pressure really from behind. On board with Yamamoto as we look at Stuvik, who's making a move on one of the Shane van Gisbergen, that is actually. So Stuvik going up into 6th position. He's going to go about the group ahead of Junkadea and Pagenaud. Yamamoto's just about managed to pull over a second on the 4th and 5th place drivers. And here's Makino having a little look into turn 1 on Palou, who Palou not having one of his standout drives as we come to expect, obviously dominating the IndyCar season at the moment, and I'm guessing that's he's paying more attention to that obviously than the Nations Cup, because lingering towards the back is the Spaniard at the moment. But Yamamoto, obviously, in these early stages, has the pace over the pair ahead, but not quite enough to close on to the top 2, so he's going to be fairly safe in 3rd for the time being. He's taken another half a second on Junkadea. And here's Pagenaud again having a look up in the inside of Junkadea, and he looks like he's made that move stick, and he has. So Pagenaud moves his way up into 4th position. Now, can he do anything about Yamamoto just up the road? And Newgarden just about outside of that 1 second gap, which generally, when you're within that 1 second, you start to get a slipstream off of the car ahead. But now he's got to do it all himself. He's got to find all the pace he needs to try and catch back up onto Dixon and get himself back in that slipstream. Otherwise he could potentially fall into the clutches of Yamamoto, who's again building and building on his pace. It's still 3.2 seconds between Newgarden and Yamamoto. But again, Pagenaud starting to eke into that 3rd position of Yamamoto now. This is Juncker now under pressure from Stuvik, and now Stuvik has a look at the inside of the turn 1, but doesn't quite manage, but he can have another look into turn 2. No, thinks again. In the background, it looked like Rast having a look on Van Gisbergen into turn 2, but again, nothing to report there. Still, Scott Dixon. It's not even a 10th here and there, it's more like 100th and 1,000th here and there compared to Dixon and Newgarden. See it come round once again to come through the final corner and complete another lap. So 8 laps in the bag. Still 11 laps left to go in this race. Simon Pagenaud being told he is absolutely flying as he's again made his way through on Juncker earlier, and he's now right on the back of Yamamoto for 3rd position. And the Tyne driver down the back of the field has had some sort of front wing issue, so she's had to come in and have a wing change. Here's Palou in 16th position, stuck behind Hansen. Obviously Hansen has been leading the championship, the balanced performance not serving him particularly well. Still in this race, De Vries and Lloyd out of the race so far. The rest still running. Some having technical issues along the way. But Pagenaud is all over the back of Yamamoto, and he's having a look now up the inside, and through goes Pagenaud into 3rd position as they come onto the start-finish straight. Now, has Yamamoto got anything to respond with? He's not quite close enough down this start-finish straight, but he's going to have a look now, and he's going to go up the inside. No. Pagenaud shuts the door, and that's actually cost Yamamoto a bit of time there. Newgarden still in that 2nd position, and it is still not much between Dixon and Newgarden in terms of lap time. Dixon only just, well, not even eking out a 10th each lap between the pair of them. But now, with 10 laps remaining, can Pagenaud close that 4-second gap down to Newgarden? There's definitely plenty of time there as we look to Max Hart of Ireland. Obviously Hart having a few issues out in Dijon last time out. But he has Alex Lynn for company ahead. Again, not the best of days for Team England so far, after a very strong start to the season. And here's Larry Ten Void, who obviously was involved in that early first lap collision, although we didn't quite catch exactly what happened, but he's moving his way up through the field into 12th position ahead of Dries van Voor. And so Ten Void, the multiple Porsche Super Cup winner, sets about Bourdais for 11th position. But here is Simon Pagenaud, who's still looking, and he's now closed the gap down to 3.2 seconds between Newgarden and himself. So the gap coming down pretty quickly, and there is definitely potential there for second position as we look at Stuvik there going through on Danny Juncadella. So that's 5th place for the Thai driver. But Juncadella is coming back again and is going up the inside, but again, very much like Pagenaud earlier, Stuvik closes the door. Here's Pagenaud coming through this middle section. He's actually lost a little bit of time this time round so far as the lap goes on. This is Bourdais harassing De Resta for that final points paying position of 10th place. He's lining up down this back straight. He's in the slipstream, but it seems like that Team Scotland car has got a fair amount of pace on the straights there compared to the France car. Here's Elfyn Evans down in 20th position, the sole remaining car of Wales. Still on the back end of the group, and there is quite a long train still coming down that back straight, and it is Newgarden losing another 10th there to Dixon, so the gap is 1.3 seconds to Dixon and 3 seconds pretty much exactly to Pagenaud. Pagenaud not quite making the inroads that he was earlier. Here is Hansen on the back of Van Voor. Pagenaud still chasing down that second position, but it's going to be a tall order now with the lap starting to tick down to the finish. The team reckon he's going to be on the gearbox in 5 laps. So it's going to be roughly around lap 17-18 by the time he gets there, so he's not going to have much time to catch on to the back as the Thai driver of Lee Watanabe makes up a position following the pit stop of early. So that's through on Lotterer actually, so Lotterer not having much of a recovery drive after the incident earlier, has to concede to 23rd position. Here is Elfyn Evans still on the back of the big train at the moment. Pretty much going all the way up to points is that train. But Newgarden still just about hanging on to Dixon, although it is still going up incrementally. It's now 1.4 seconds between the pair of them. But Pagenaud starting to eke into that lead still. It is below 2 seconds now for the battle for second. This looks to be Rast on the back of Van Gisbergen for 7th. Rast carrying the hopes of Germany on his shoulders at the moment. But no gap appearing as Hansen goes up the inside of Van Voor and takes 13th position. Still another couple of positions to make up until the scoring points. Here's Dixon again still Looks like he's eased off a little bit now because he's still keeping that gap. Again, only making about 10th every lap or every 2 laps. Is Stuvik, who has now dispatched a Junkadea. No real pressure there, and is going about chasing after Yamamoto. So, has he got enough laps to catch Yamamoto for 4th position? Meanwhile, Pagenaud is still closing a couple attempts on Newgarden. The gap is now below 2 seconds between Newgarden and Pagenaud. So there's Newgarden still gradually losing toe off of Dixon and gradually falling into the clutches of Pagenaud, but has Pagenaud got enough laps left? Obviously the team predicting that he's going to be there by lap 17 or 18. But has he got the tyres left? Has he pushed too much? Has Pagenaud done the same, trying to keep up with Dixon? As the gap is pretty much nearly a second between Newgarden and Pagenaud, so potentially give it another lap and they're going to be, or Pagenaud's going to be within slipstream distance. Here is the gap now down to 1.2 seconds. And actually it's down to a second nearly. And again, it looks like Team France have set their car up with a bit more downforce, which is allowing them more time, as Gisbergen is going to have to retire the car with gearbox issue. So what was already looking like a good day for Team New Zealand sees Van Gisbergen retire with a transmission issue, and as you can see he's pulled to one side of the track, and that is him out for the sprint race, but he's still got the feature race to make amends later. He's definitely not going to be happy with that. Meanwhile, back at the front, Pagenaud again taking more time out of Newgarden. They come on to the second to last lap here. It is pretty much, by the looks of things, I think, going to come down to a last lap scrap between the pair of them. Dixon has got nearly 2 seconds over Newgarden, so obviously Newgarden's not going to have any assistance from his fellow IndyCar driver, obviously Pagenaud being an ex-IndyCar driver. And actually, Pagenaud is all over the back of him now, so potentially you can get the move done before we even get onto this final lap. Here is Dixon with the pair in the background, and Pagenaud still within 3/10 of Newgarden as they swoop round into this final corner to start the final lap of the race. And Pagenaud is the closest he's been all race. He's tucked up in the slipstream, but it seems like that Team America car have focused on straight line speed, so on this start finish straight, Pagenaud not able to make, well, actually losing time slightly, but now most of the straights are over and it's back into the twisty technical sections of this Valencia circuit. Just half a lap to go for Dixon. Meanwhile, Pagenaud again all over the back of Newgarden. He's not going to be close enough for a move there, but he definitely seems to have the pace through the corners, and you can see just there as Lotterer enters the pits once again, so Lotterer with another issue on the final lap. But Pagenaud all over the back of Newgarden. They come through this middle straight, and then around the final couple of corners, through the final corner in fact. Pagenaud closes, but it looks like he's not close enough. But up front it is Dixon who scores a win here for the sprint race at Valencia in Division 1. Newgarden just about holds on to that second position with Pagenaud in third, Yamamoto in fourth, and Stuvik in fifth. As the rest of the field comes on through, it was Sebastian Bourdais who just holds on to that 10th position with Ten Void again just missing out. He had a decent appearance and a decent drive through the field, just about knocking onto the points. As we look at the final drivers crossing the line, we might have to wait some time for Lotterer. And here's Goosen. So Goosen with Lotterer just behind. They're still in the middle sector here, and they just enter the final sector now. And it looks to be no moves going on there. So across the line they come to finish the race. Not a good day for Germany there, with Lotterer finishing last across the road, but a good day so far for New Zealand, with Scott Dixon finishing in the lead, with Joseph Newgarden in second, Simon Pagenaud in third, Yamamoto fourth, with Stuvik in fifth, Junkadea in sixth position, with Rene Rast in seventh, Carl Larsen in eighth, Paul de Resta in ninth, and Sebastian Bourdais getting the final point in 10th. Larry Ten Void in 11th, with Philip Hansen in 12th and Van Voor in 13th. Alex Dunn in 14th. Alex Palou in 15th, not having the best of showings here in his home circuit, with Marquinhos in 16th, Alex Lynn in 17th, Max Hart 18th, Alvin Evans in 19th, and Jack Aitken in 20th, with Lee Watanabe in 21st, Goosen in 22nd, and Lotterer being the final finisher in 23rd, with Van Gisbergen a transmission issue, and De Vries an electrical issue, and Ella Lloyd a transmission issue. And after all those sprint races being finished, it is now back to Chris in the studio.
Well, it was only a matter of time, wasn't it, that Scott Dixon was going to win a race in this. But great congratulations to him. Very good drive. But again, another disappointing result by Andre Lotterer, having those issues after issues. It seems like it's a recurring theme for him. Hopefully for the feature race it's a different story, but before that we have the Division 2 feature race. And when we look at the grid for that, we have Felix Rosenqvist on pole. Even with the BOP hit that he takes, that's very, very impressive. Robert Wickens alongside him. Jamie Whincup starts in third, Christian Lundgaard in fourth, with Kevin Magnussen, his compatriot, in fifth, Sheldon van der Linde in sixth, Felipe Nasr, the sprint race winner, in seventh, Sebastian Buemi in eighth, Stefan Riquelme and Arthur Leclerc in ninth and 10th respectively. Hopefully they'll be getting a better result than what they got in the sprint. We've got Raffaele Marcello in 11th, Felipe Albuquerque in 12th, Blaswell Ward in 13th, Will Power 14th, Bruno Senna in 15th, Maher Vergunnison in 16th, and now we see a bit of a change after Nico Verone's penalty. We have Ericsson 16th, Honorelli 18th, Van der Linde 19th, Sasha Fenestraz in 20th, Nico Verone in 21st, James Smith in 22nd, Rafael Vanega Gomez in 23rd, Antonio Acosta at 24th. Irene Cartagena does not start at the back in this race for once, because now Antonio Fueco takes that spot after his penalty. And now I hand it straight back to Ryan again for the feature race of Division 2.
Back again here in Valencia for the Div 2 feature race. We have Rosenqvist on pole with Robert Wickens in second as the lights come on. 1 to 4 and 5 lights. And we're racing in Valencia. And it's a good getaway from Rosenquist, but coming around the outside, that looks to be one of the South African cars, and that's Sheldon van der Linde going up into 3rd place. So Rosenquist and Wickens, and actually van der Linde goes up into 2nd, ahead of Wickens. Buemi and a few Fornarelli with one of the India cars getting a bit of a coming together going into Douans, although a lot cleaner than it was in the sprint race. But still at the front it is Felix Rosenquist from Sheldon van der Linde. Wickens now demoted down to 3rd. He's got Lungard all over the back of him with Leclerc from Monaco, who's made up a few positions in that start. And hopefully he's going to have a better race than he did in the sprint. So Rosenquist already pulling over a 2nd to Sheldon van der Linde. Wickens hasn't let go of van der Linde yet. So is he going to be tucked up? He's not going to be quite close enough as they come onto the start-finish straight to complete the first lap. But he might be close enough to have a go into turn 2. And this is Lungard going up, or defending from Leclerc, and Leclerc's gone through on Lungard, so that's 4th position for Leclerc. Through the tight and twisty middle sector. And actually, Kelvin van der Linde has had to pit, so he's obviously had some sort of issue in this opening lap. And here's Wickens now under pressure from Leclerc. So after Leclerc definitely wanting to make up for the mishaps from earlier. And he's tucked up behind the Canadian. So round the final corner, and he's going to be in a good position actually to have a look down the inside, and that's actually going to have affected his run onto the start-finish straight. Rosenquist still in the lead by 1.3 seconds actually, so van der Linde's closed a little in that final sector. Riquelme's making his way up now on Lungard. He's going to have to be a bit careful there, as he has got Buemi all over the back of him as well. Gap still yo-yoing a bit between the two front runners. Back up to 1.5 through that first sector. And really starting to get away now from Wickens, who is still under pressure from Leclerc, and Arthur Leclerc, who's been doing a lot of driving recently for the factory AF Corsa team in GT3s, and he's going to have another look this time up the inside into the final corner. Does he make it stick this time? Yes, he does. So Arthur Leclerc of Monaco goes up into 3rd position, demoting Wickens to 4th, and there's a real train of cars coming up behind Wickens, but Wickens is having another look into turn 1, and there's contact. So contact there, and that's allowed Lungard up the inside into turn 2. Wickens not particularly happy there, but at the end of the day, turn 1 is a tough corner. You've got to be 100% committed to make that move, and obviously, you know, Leclerc had to turn in at some point. Here's Felipe Albuquerque having it all wrong coming onto the back straight. And Team Portugal, who had a great start to the start of this season, although it seems with the balance of performance they're not having the same level of performance as they have done before. No further action on that little collision going into turn 1. But here is Sheldon van der Linde, who's almost 2 seconds clear, and this is Whincup up the inside of Albuquerque. So Whincup, who's started this race in 3rd position, I believe, has not had the best of starts, and although he's pulled away up the inside of Albuquerque, Albuquerque's going to have another look down the inside and retakes that 8th position into turn 1. And in the background there, that's Felipe Nasser now having a look up the inside of Whincup. So where Whincup thought he made the move up into 8th, he's now been demoted down to 10th. Is the Australian. Willpower, his teammate, down in 15th, so scoring that last championship point as it stands. Here is Leclerc now chasing after van der Linde. See what the gap looks like. And the gap is now 2.4 seconds between van der Linde and Leclerc, and Rosenqvist really starting to get the hammer down and getting away, as Stefan Riquelme now going up the inside of Wickens. So Wickens dropping like a stone here. He's now got Buemi on the back of him, but once again, can Wickens have a look? And he is going to have a look coming into turn 1, and he pulls level with Riquelme and goes up the inside and retakes that position. So Riquelme's demoted a position now. Is Buemi going to have a look up the inside? Yes, he does, into turn 1. So it seems if you're going to make a move in the final corner, you're going to have to make sure it sticks. And you got the good driver. And who's that off? That's Sheldon van der Linde. So van der Linde's out. It seems like a suspension failure from what we can see there. We'll have confirmation come through shortly. But van der Linde out of 2nd position, and it is indeed a suspension failure for the South African. So that puts Leclerc and Lundgaard up into 2nd and 3rd position, and definitely gives Rosenqvist some breathing space with a 5.6 second advantage. Here's Raffaele Marcello having a bit of a lock up there, under pressure from Will Power. And also Buemi, by the looks of things, has got through on Wickens, so Buemi up into 4th, I think I could see there. Wickens 5th, Riquelme 6th. From what I could just about see there, Marcello being passed by Will Power there, so down into 14th. Up another position for the South African. No, sorry, the Australian. Now knocking on the points for India is Mahavir Raghunathan, so 15th there for the Indian driver. Here is Rosenqvist. 6 seconds to lead now as he comes through this final sector. Nico Varone battling with his teammate Fenestraz for 17th and 18th. Not the position the two Argentinians wanted to find themselves in, but as you can see, there is a very long train of cars and plenty of laps left to get up into the points. Rosenqvist, who's actually lost a little bit of time in that first sector. Leclerc managing to pull 2 temps back on the Swede. So a possible mistake there. It's not over yet. although the gap is near enough 6 seconds, anything can happen with still quite a few laps left to go. Here's Antonio Fuoco down in 23rd and going out wide. There is the Italian driver. He also not finding himself in a position he'd expect to be in. Is the factory Ferrari driver in the World Endurance Championship, and obviously known for his speed and commitment. Here is Lundgaard, who's gradually setting about going after Leclerc, and this is Riquelme, the other Monegasque driver, going up into 5th position, taking another position from Wickens. So something tells me that Wickens is running a heavier fuel load, is going to go longer into this race. We're expecting to see the pit window open around lap 14. All pretty much status quo up front. Buemi's now starting to mount a charge to catch the top 3. As we look at Fornarelli, who's under pressure from the 2 Argentinian drivers of Fenestraz and Verone. Again, Italy not having the best of starts to the season. They seem to be struggling with their pace. Germany also another team that has been struggling a bit at the start of the season, which we wouldn't really expect to see, as Nasser goes up the inside of Whincup but doesn't manage to make it stick. He's still just about far enough ahead of Magnussen to not be bothered into turn 2. Lundgaard being given what is believed that Rosenqvist is running light on fuel, which is why he's got the pace, although the team don't seem to be quite sure based off of that message there. I think for Lundgaard's sake, he's hoping that it is the case that he's running light and not just this quick. Rosenqvist, the Swedish driver, obviously had a very promising junior career with multiple wins at Macau, but it never quite seemed to work out for him for the rest of his career. Obviously spending a lot of time in IndyCar, and showed a lot of promise, and he always had quite a lot of speed, but it never seemed to come together. But since he came to the Grand Prix World Series paddock, he seemed to have rewritten those stories and shushed off some of the critics. And is still dominant. I think it's looking like we might see another 5 laps from Rosenqvist before coming into pit. Leclerc still not able to respond, although I think he's hoping that he's going to go a little bit further into this stint. Lundgaard, who is now just over 2 seconds ahead of Buemi. But Buemi is also going to have Riquelme for company, as he's got just under a second there, and that's Kevin van der Linde going off. So Kelvin van der Linde, who's on a bit of a recovery drive following an incident in the opening lap, he's come through this middle sector and he's just completely dropped it, pushing too hard to make up the difference. Now finds himself stuck in the gravel wall and going into the barriers there. And I don't quite know what he's doing there. He's managing to make right haulix of that, and he's now gone a lap down, so having to stop for the leaders to come through. He's now, after spending quite some time in the sandpit making sandcastles, finds himself in between first and second. Here with Lundgaard, who's still keeping the gap pretty much the same to Leclerc, which you could see as a positive. Means that he's not slower than Leclerc, and actually I think he's clawed a couple of tenths back to Leclerc. And Buemi has actually lost a bit of time to Lundgaard, so still under pressure from Riquelme is Buemi. At around a second between himself and Buemi. And here's O'Ward making a move, or trying to make a move up the inside of Senna, but that's not quite worked out for him. There's Raguna from there, testing the track limits of turn 1. And he's got Marcello again, another driver who potentially is running a bit heavier on fuel in this race because he's gone backwards. Very much like Wickens, who's managing to hold on to sixth position ahead of Felipe Albuquerque. And as I say that, here is Albuquerque, who is seeming to miss a couple gears coming off the back straight there, and is now under pressure from Jamie Whincup, who's having a little bit more of a recovery and resurgence in pace, but at the same time he's got Nasser and Magnussen behind him as well. There is Lundgaard, Marcello having a bit of a lock-up as they come down onto the start-finish straight. And here he is under pressure from Ragunathan. So Ragunathan's gone up the inside of Marcello. Whether or not he's actually managed to make it stick, he has not, but he's going to have another look into turn 2. And just off camera there, Ragunathan now through into 14th. Here is Leclerc, 7.5 seconds now down on Rosenqvist. He's now catching up onto the back of the struggling Calvin van der Linde. Lundgaard still keeping the gap pretty much the same. The front runners are all locked in, ready and waiting for the pit lane intervention. Here's Marcello under pressure now from, I think, Verone, or one of the Argentinian cars, as we go side by side through for turn 2, and it's Fenestraz actually, but Marcello hangs it out, toughs it out around the outside and retakes that 15th position. He's not going to give up that easily. Some of you may remember Marcello's fabulous performance in the GT Championship around this circuit, where he pulled out something like a 15 to 20 second advantage during that race. but it wasn't quite to be in that race with his teammate, him handing over to his teammates who let it all go in the wet weather conditions. But Rosenqvist pits from the lead, which gives the lead to Leclerc. Obviously Leclerc and Lundgaard potentially going a few laps longer. And here is Nasser, but in the background Magnussen going through on Whincup, so where Whincup thought he was sizing up the Brazilian for position, it's not quite worked out. Here is Leclerc, who's going to be starting to get some of the turbulent air off of that South African car ahead. Potentially not going to be happy with that. It does mean he'll get a bit of a slipstream down the straights, but a bit of understeer through the corners he'll be experiencing. Here is Buemi now in third position as a result of Rosenqvist pitting. Marcello still holds on, as here is Villagomez, and he has got Rosenqvist all over the back of him. So Rosenqvist actually, it seems as Ragunafin's now pitted, but it doesn't seem like the best pit strategy at the moment for Team Sweden, as he now has a look up at the inside into turn 2, and that's another position made up for Rosenqvist. Now has Da Costa ahead of him, but this is going to be costing him time. So Leclerc and Lundgaard out front. Lundgaard has now lost down to 4th position. Now we're looking here at a very slow moving Marcello, and it seems like he's got an issue of some sort. They're going to call him in to the pit lane, if he can make it to the pit lane, that is. And there's Rosenqvist going through, so that's another position for Rosenqvist. He's going to leap through this final corner, and hopefully he's close enough. Yep. So Marcello just about manages to limp it back. As we look at Hinchcliffe down the back straight, so Marcello is in. Leclerc is being asked whether or not he wants to box as a result of the lapped car ahead, because he's going to be losing time there. Here's Nareen Kavaney having all sorts of issues, I believe, into turn 2, Curva Doohan. There's not too many corner names to this Valencian circuit. And still Kavaney having trouble, so surely he's going to be pitting sometime soon, because it seems like he's not got too much grip left on those tyres, as our leader Leclerc now pits, and also Lundgaard pits as well. So where's that going to feed him out in comparison to Rosenqvist? Obviously Rosenqvist has been suffering a bit with the traffic. Here is Raikkonen, and Kevin Magnussen now comes under attack. So that's Whincup up to 5th. Foucault now pits from the back end of the field. Buemi are new race leader for the time being. He's got Riquelme and Wickens in second and third, obviously all yet to stop. So with the leaders pitting, we see Rosenquist in 14th now. Still not managed to get past Da Costa. There's Will Power in 9th now, and he's on the back of Bruno Senna in 8th. And just up ahead of him is O'Ward. There's a few more people coming to pit. You've got Albuquerque, Whincup, O'Ward, all in the pit box now. That's going to promote Rosenquist up another 3 positions. There's a few other people also pitting ahead, so Rosenquist up to 9th now. And is now matching Da Costa pretty much on time. He's going to be right on top of them into turn 2, and he dives down the inside, and that's another position taken for Rosenquist as he pulls his way through the field again. Here's Bruno Senna in 5th now as a result of people pitting. He's got Will Power, the Australian, all over the back of him. There's Hinchcliffe. So Hinchcliffe with Leclerc swarming all over the back of him. He also wants to make up some positions to try and gain some ground back on Rosenquist. Back to the back end of the field. This is Verone being chased by the 2 Italians and Marcello, the Swiss Italian. Power now pits as well from 6th position. Here is Lundgaard, and he is on the back end of Hinchcliffe. So Lundgaard, who has also pitted and is making his way up the field, he's actually a lot closer now to Leclerc compared to where they were before the pit window. So if Lundgaard can make his way through Hinchcliffe fairly rapidly, he's not got too much distance between himself and the Monegasque driver, and he's going up the inside now into the final corner. Actually, no, it's not the final corner. The camera angle at this circuit, the final corner and the corner at the end of the back straight pretty much looks identical to me. Riquelme up in second with Buemi still ahead. And Stoney, obviously these two running a lot longer on their opening stint. Will mean that they were running slowly to start off with, but as the fuel burns off, their lap time should still remain pretty much similar. How is this going to help them, seeing as all their rivals are stuck in amongst the traffic of those who haven't pitted yet? Raghunathan's been told to retire the car, so Raghunathan, who was running in the points at one point, having to retire the car for Team India. Buemi being told to box. And obviously the other thing, with them running longer on this stint, it will mean they'll have fresher tyres compared to everyone else, as we see confirmation of Raghunathan going out with a water leak. Now, did Buemi pit? Yes, he did. So both Buemi and Riquelme pits from the lead. Wickens will most likely follow as well. Yes, he does. So here is Rosenquist, who nearly gets his nose lopped off by Fenestraz entering pit lane there. And it is now normal service resumed for the Swedish driver. He has 3.2 seconds though. over Leclerc, which is half of what he had, or more than half of what he had, compared to before the pit stop window. Here is Power having a look up the inside of O'Ward, but not managing to make that stick. Buemi has managed to come out in 4th position. With Riquelme slotting in 6th position behind Felipe Nasser. But Buemi's got quite a bit of work to do to catch up onto the back of Lundgaard. And actually, by the looks of things, he may even have Calvin van der Linde to lap as well. Although we will probably expect to see van der Linde come in and pit again, and that's a bit of a scary moment there for Wickens down in 9th position. He's pushing to catch up to Whincup on those fresher tyres. Obviously those tyres not quite up to temperature yet as he completes his first lap after the pit stop. But here is Rosenqvist, and the gap's come down more. So the gap is now down to 2.4 seconds between Rosenqvist and Leclerc. Here is Nasser under pressure from Riquelme, and that's Fuoco going off. And that's a big old hit there for Fuoco. So he's come out of turn 1 into turn 2. And then it's this very fast left then right, and just pushing the front end a little too much and just understeers off into the barriers. But lucky not to take any damage there, as that looked to be one of the... I think that was Hinchcliffe going through there. And it was Hinchcliffe, so he's now got Narain Karthikeyan for company as we look at Antonio Felix da Costa all over the back of Fornarelli. Italy's only hope really for points. But it does look like da Costa definitely has the pace over the Italian. And again, Leclerc taking time out of Rosenqvist, now down to 1.8 seconds. Here is Nico Varone under pressure from his teammate Fenestraz, and these two have been glued together all race, and Fenestraz is going to have another look into turn 2 and goes through up into 14th position. That has now allowed da Costa onto the back of Varone now, who has made his way past the Italian of Fornarelli. Taking more time out once again, down to 1.6 seconds, so that's another 2 tenths taken out this sector. So come across the start-finish straight. The gap is now 1.3, so another 3 tenths that last sector. Rosenqvist is hemorrhaging time in this second half of this race. Leclerc with the slightly newer tyres as we see Albuquerque going through. Da Costa going through on Varone, so he's now got Fenestraz to deal with, but Varone's going to have another look back into turn 1, but he's not quite close enough. Here is Lundgaard. Now, obviously, Lundgaard and Leclerc did pit around the same time, so has he also got similar pace as Leclerc, and will he be catching? As this is Calvin van der Linde retiring already a lap down, and I think the rest of the field is going to be pretty happy with that, because he was turning into a bit of a mobile chicane out the back of the field there. But again, not the best of days for South Africa. Again, showing a lot of promise, but not amounting to anything with another double DNF. But here is Leclerc. The gap is now down to 0.7 of a second to himself and Rosenqvist. He's got quite a few laps left to do it, around 11 to 12 laps still remaining of this Grand Prix. Actually, yeah, 11 and a half laps remaining. And it looks like Leclerc is in the hot seat right now to pull off a move. Not quite close enough yet, but I'm pretty sure he will be close enough coming down the start-finish straight to Rosenqvist. They come round this long left-hander into the final corner and pops himself into the slipstream. Although it looks like there, Rosenqvist got a pretty good exit out the final corner. Leclerc in the slipstream, and what is the gap coming over the line now? He's only really managed to take a 10th out, but obviously he's now following, as you can see there, the car being disrupted by the turbulent air of Rosenqvist ahead, and that's Villa Gomez also having a few issues trying to hunt down Marcello, who's recovering from whatever incident or whatever technical issues he had earlier on in the race that caused him to pit a little earlier than he would have wanted. Christian Lundgaard, who is actually catching on Rosenqvist as well, as it was over 4 seconds, it's now 3.7 seconds. Leclerc is now 0.2 off of Rosenqvist. But it seems like the Swedish car has been set up for a bit more straight line speed compared to the Monegasque car of Leclerc. As you can see, Leclerc makes up a lot of time through the corners, but it just seems like that Swiss car has got the punch out of the corners. But it seems this time Leclerc's much closer than before as they come across the start-finish race. And is he going to challenge into turn one? He pops out and goes up the inside. No, not quite. Rosenqvist thinks better of it. In the background, you've got Lundgaard, who's now under pressure from Buemi. So Buemi has taken a lot of time, obviously, on that offset strategy of going long. And actually, if he can make his way through on Lundgaard ASAP, he's going to bring himself into the frame, it looks like, as a result of not managing to pull that move off into turn one. Leclerc's nearly a second to Rosenqvist, so Buemi saying Lundgaard is quite the roadblock, and this is a difficult circuit usually to overtake at. They usually say the gap of 0.2 is the equivalent of half a second at this circuit, and he's going up the inside into the final corner, but no! And it looked like there was nearly contact there. I don't think there was contact, but that's really affected Buemi's drive on the start-finish straight to Lundgaard. Leclerc's actually lost out, so it seems Rosenqvist has had a bit of a regroup this previous lap. Here's Kevin Magnussen looking up the inside of Whincup. Still unable to make his way past the Australian driver. He's going to have Wickens for company soon as well. And in the meantime, also, Whincup is trying to find a way past Albuquerque, who is also not too far away from Felipe Nasser. But back again, Buemi managing to reel in Lundgaard again as they come through this tricky middle sector, and there's Marcus Ericsson having all sorts of difficulty going through turn 1 again. He is on the back of Fuoco and Carthagena, so must have been some sort of issue for Ericsson to be running this far back. Here's Villagomez for Mexico, who's got James Hinchcliffe for company. Hinchcliffe a little bit off the boil today in Valencia. He's had some pretty good performances of recent, but this isn't one of them. But back at the front here is Arthur Leclerc. Is he having a bit of a regroup? It seems like the gap is staying the same, and look in the background is Buemi still all over the back of Lundgaard and not managing to get through. Here's Hinchcliffe trying to get through. On Villagomez, I think that was. But here is Leclerc, still losing a bit of time to Rosenqvist now. Has he burnt out all his sweeties at once trying to catch Rosenqvist? It seemed he had that one shot and he blew it. And there goes up the inside again. And through goes Buemi. Now, is he going to manage to hold on to this position? Has he got the drive compared to Lundgaard? It looks like he does, but Lundgaard's going to have a go back into turn 1. But it looks like job done there for Buemi, and he can now go off up the road to Leclerc. But he has lost quite a lot of time. 5 seconds to Leclerc now, where we were looking at around 4 seconds to the lead earlier. But he has got 7 laps to try and catch and pass the leaders up ahead. Rosenqvist, I think, has made a mistake because Leclerc's now 4/10 off of the lead. And that's Marcello going through and up into another position. Still on the outskirts of the points. Top 15 score in this future race. Here is Rosenqvist under pressure from Leclerc once again. So come onto the start-finish straight, and Leclerc's definitely close enough to challenge for a move. Rosenqvist going slightly defensive there into turn 1. Is that going to compromise him into turn 2? But this is Buemi, who's gradually getting away from Lundgaard as we look at Carthagena struggling to find a gear there at the back of the field, with Fuoco and Ericsson trailing behind. A pair of them not managing to find a way through on the Indian driver. But here is the lead still. It is Felix Rosenqvist from Arthur Leclerc, but has Leclerc got anything to fight back with? He seems to have found a way back up onto the bit gearbox of the Swedish driver. Buemi not really able to make it any inroads into these guys. But onto the start-finish straight again, and as you can see, the car of Rosenqvist just able to pull a couple of car lengths out of that final corner compared to Leclerc's car. And it just seems like Leclerc's car's got far more downforce and is able to carry a lot more corner speed. Problem is, like I said earlier, this isn't the easiest circuit to pass at. Here's Magnussen, currently in 7th position between Felipe Nasser and Felipe Albuquerque. What Leclerc can do now is pile on the pressure on the Swedish driver. Can he make another mistake? Rosenqvist with the fastest lap currently. It seems like Leclerc's not quite letting go, although he has lost a couple tenths to Rosenqvist this time round. As they cross the line, it still remains at 7 tenths per second with 4 laps remaining. Buemi looks as though he is fairly comfortable in that 3rd position, although he seems to be making a bit of a habit of not finishing races, either to fault of his own or car failure, so wouldn't be holding breath just yet for the Swiss driver. Here's Villagomez under pressure once again from James Hinchcliffe, who's now actually finding himself under pressure from Raffaele Marcello for 19th position. So Marcello moves up one more position. But, well, one Swiss driver is towards the back of the field, another Swiss driver towards the front end. And holding on to that 3rd position, it seems Rosenqvist has responded once again this lap and has extended the advantage to 9 tenths. And what's this? Buemi slowing! My goodness! Buemi with an engine failure! He just cannot get a break in this championship. Once again, out from a podium position. Again, no fault of his own. It was Silverstone he had another failure whilst fighting for the lead. And another not particularly good weekend for Team Switzerland, although they are still up there in the championship as it stands, although it will be a big hit for them this weekend. But still, in the background, this is that ongoing battle with Karthikeyan, Fuoco and Ericsson, and Karthikeyan still being the roadblock, but in the meantime that's allowed Lundgaard up into 3rd position as a result of Buemi's retirement. We have Leclerc and Raikkonen 2nd and 4th, so good innings so far for Monaco, but it seems like the elastic band has now been broken between Rosenqvist and Leclerc, as now the gap is over a second with 2 laps remaining, and this is Fuoco up the inside of Karthikeyan into the final corner, and that's sort of wrong-footed Karthikeyan a little bit. Sorry, that's not the final corner again, it's the corner coming off the back straight. Barring any mistakes. And talking of mistakes, here's Fuoco going off. So he's worked so hard to get past Karthikeyan, and he's now broken his front wing. He's now going to have to come into pit lane. Potentially, depending on how long his pit stop's going to be, he's going to come out a lap down as Rosenqvist rounds the final corner. Here's Fornarelli in the final point scoring position. So Italy on for at least 1 point at the moment, unless the Argentinian behind can say otherwise. Leclerc still stalking Rosenqvist, hoping for a mistake. As we have seen it a few times where Rosenqvist looks like he's totally in control. He seems to have the odd lapse in concentration, runs wide and loses his front wing. I think we saw that in Dijon. But here is Rosenqvist out at the final corner and comes across the line to win here in Valencia. So another good performance from the Swedish driver, with Leclerc finishing second for Monaco and Lundgaard for Denmark. And slowly across the line, that was Riquelme there, but just about managed to get across the line there. Magnussen, Wickens comes through. Whincup scoring points as well as power for Australia, so an improvement there compared to previous races. Da Costa across the line in 14th, and Fornarelli taking the final point for the Italian team, managing to hold off ahead of Verone. Marcello not quite having enough of a last minute chase to make up any points. Here's Karthikeyan still staying ahead of Ericsson. I think Ericsson's pride will be a bit bruised there, not being able to get past one of the slowest cars in the field. But there's confirmation there. Felix Rosenqvist with the win, Arthur Leclerc in second, Christian Lundgaard third, Stefan Riquelme in fourth, Felipe Nasr in fifth, Kevin Magnussen in 6th with Felipe Albuquerque in 7th, 8th place for Robert Wickens, 9th for Jamie Whincup with Pato O'Ward in 10th, Will Power in 11th, Bruno Senna in 12th and Sasha Fenestraz in 13th. Moving further down the order, and it was again Antonio Felix da Costa in 14th and Fornarelli taking the final points paying position in 15th with Verone 16th, Marcello 17th, Villa Gomez 18th, Hinchcliffe 19th, Narain Karthikeyan 20th and Ericsson 21st. Antonio Fuoco being the final person to actually cross the line, with Sebastian Buemi still classified, even though he had that engine failure, and 3 laps down was a transmission failure for Kelvin van der Linde. Ragunathan out with a water leak, and Sheldon van der Linde out of second position with the suspension failure. So after what was quite a dramatic feature race, it is back over to Chris.
Well, that got very dicey towards the end with Arthur Leclerc and Felix Rosenqvist, but Felix being Felix, he held out, and now he becomes the very first driver to have more than one win in the Nations Cup. But as it's all amazing and great for one, it is again another annoying result for Sebastian Buemi with the car fire right at the end. Being on board for that is gut-wrenching, and just seeing that, it is drama, and that's what this Nations Cup is all about, so brilliant. But now that Division 2 sprint and feature races are both finished, we can now see what the driver standings look like, and Felix Rosenqvist is on top with 67 points, taking it from Pato O'Ward, who's only 8 behind. Felipe Albuquerque is at 40 points, Robert Wickens on 38, Sasha Fenestraz on 37, Felipe Nasr with a sprint win today helps himself get up to 34 points in 6th place. Jamie Whincup, solid performances all the way through there on 7th, Antonio Felix da Costa at 31, then we have Arthur Leclerc, Rafael Marcello and Kevin Magnussen all on 30 points. A great race for Arthur Leclerc and the Monaco camp. Then we have Sebastian Buemi on 26. Then we have Stefan Riquelme with 25 points. And then in 14th place we can see that is Christian Lundgaard at 24 points, Will Power on 19, Leonardo Fornarelli with 17 points, Marcus Ericsson with 16, James Hinchcliffe with 14 points, Kelvin van der Linde with 11 points, Nico Verone with 9, Fuoco with 8, Bruno with 7, Sheldon van der Linde, the last with points on 3 points, and then it's Mahavir Raghunathan, Rafael Villagomez, and the red card again, all on 0 still. Now we can look after 3 rounds what the nation standings looks like. As Sweden is on top with 83 points, Portugal 71, 12 points behind, Mexico with 59, Switzerland 56, Monaco 55, Denmark 54, Australia 53, Canada 52. God, it's still close between all of those teams in the 50s. Then we have Argentina with 46, Brazil 41, Italy with 25, South Africa with a disappointing 14 points, and India with nothing. With 3 down, it is now 1 to go, the Division 1 feature, and we have Sebastian Bourdais on pole for that, just 300 ahead of Nick de Vries in 2nd, René Rast in 3rd, Carl Larsen in 4th, Negi Yamamoto for Japan in 5th, Shane van Gisbergen, the first of the Kiwi cars, in 6th, Daniel Juncadella for Spain in 7th, Joseph Newgarden in 8th, Simon Pagenaud in 9th, and Scott Dixon rounding out the top 10. We have Sandy Stuvik in 11th, Andre Losser in 12th, Paul de Resta in 13th, Dries van Toor 14th, we've got Tadasuke Makino in 15th, Larry Tenvoorde in 16th, Philip Hansen, who would try and want to get more points as much as he can in this position, considering his high BOP hit. And then we have Ella Lloyd in 18th, Alex Palou in 19th, quite a disappointing qualifying, Alex Dunn in 20th, Nathan Lee Watanavaragul in 21st, Max Hart in 22nd, Elfyn Evans 23rd, Alex Lynn out in 24th, his first time in this car, replacing James Collado. And then we have Jack Aitken in 25th, Mark Cousins in last in 26th. And now with that all done, for the final race of the day is back to Ryan Ferris.
So here we are for the final race of the day. It's the Division 1 feature race here in Valencia. What sort of drama can we see after the second race here? And it's away. So Bourdais leads coming off the line, but de Vries has got a good run up the inside and takes the lead. No, he doesn't. They run side by side down into turn 1, but it looks like de Vries is going to have the upper hand over the French driver, but no, he still keeps around the outside. He's going to tough it out around the outside. And through into turn 3, so brilliant stuff there from Bourdais. Carl Larsen in 3rd trying to pick up the pieces, but meanwhile his teammate Joseph Newgarden has gone off and collected. Getting caught up with one of the Spanish drivers, I think that was there, so I think that was Danny Juncadella. So he's going to have to queue up and join the back of the field. And indeed, yeah. So I don't know. It seemed like not particularly heads-up driving there from Juncadella, who essentially popped out to do an overtake and didn't take much notice of Newgarden being there. But luckily, Newgarden looks to not have any damage there, and he's not too far off the back of the field, but he's not going to be happy. And there we see it is a 10-second penalty for Juncadella, a 5-place grid penalty, I think I saw there, and some penalty points on his licence. Here is Bourdais, who is managing to scamper off up the road here on this first lap. He already has an advantage now of 1.2 seconds, with Larsen now through into 2nd position. He's managed to get through on de Vries, and Van Gisbergen's now got through on de Vries as well. So de Vries dropping backwards after what was a promising start. Here's Juncadella through on Yamamoto, but obviously he has got that 10-second penalty lingering over his head, and that's Palou going off on the exit of turn 1. Lofterer has pitted and Palou's got front wing damage. Had the door closed on him there by one of the Team Wales cars. And so he is going to drop to the back end of the field, and actually he's been hit off there. So who was that? It was one of the Belgium cars. Was that Goosen? That is terrible behaviour there. Don't know if we quite got an on board. It is indeed Goosen, so tried to make a move, but didn't try hard enough there, and just drove him Palou off the circuit. So Palou, who has been the dominant driver in the IndyCar series, not quite having that level of dominance here, or luck, in the Nations Cup. And that is a disqualification for Goosen and 6 penalty points onto his licence. But meanwhile, back out at the front, it is Bourdais leading as they round the final corner. What's the gap going to be this time round? And it actually looks like Van Gisbergen has managed to get up onto the back end of Larson for second position. The gap actually 1.4 seconds, so Larson's managed to claw 2 tenths back on Bourdais this time round. De Vries seems to have settled as that Stuvik down the inside of Dries van Tor. Still going on through the measures, that is Scott Dixon in 7th position, who's got René Rast over the back end for Team Germany. As I mentioned in the previous race before, Team Germany not having the best of starts to the season, though it seems like they've found something in the latter stages as Newgarden hassling Goosen. And this should be fairly easy pickings for the American driver. That he'd probably be, as he's going to launch up the inside into turn 1, but back up at the front. Van Gisbergen still trying to find a way through as Junker Dea comes through on De Vries. De Vries tries to tough it out like Bourdais did, but not quite able to work out as well. Bourdais has opened the gap back out to 1.5 seconds to Larson. Van Gisbergen now half a second off the back end of the American. On board with Van Gisbergen of New Zealand on the back end of Larson. And here is Yamamoto now going up the inside of De Vries. Now has De Vries got an issue here because he seems to be going, or struggling for pace, as we see side-by-side action there with Stuvik. And De Vries coming back at Yamamoto now. He goes down the inside, and that's going to put him under pressure now from Dixon, who's going to have a look. No, not quite. And coming a long way back there was Van Voor, who not only took Stuvik, but he took Rast into turn 2 as we had the accordion effect. So big moves going there by the Belgian driver. Still, it is Van Gisbergen hanging on to the back end of Larson. Bourdais still keeping it steady at 1.5 seconds. It's now actually gone up to 1.8 seconds as I said that. Gisbergen making up the time on the brakes. They come down at the start-finish straight once again. It seems like Larson has the pace down the straights, and Van Gisbergen has the pace through the corners. Now Stuvik is now lining up on René Rast and goes through into turn 1. Hansen, who was our early championship leader, down in 15th position and only scoring 1 point. Here's Ten Void in 13th position. He's got De Resta ahead of him and Dunn behind. Rast has actually lost out to Pagano now, so Pagano up to 10th. It is Dunn now up the inside of Ten Void, and that's a lovely move there from the Irish driver. And now Hansen is going to hopefully show that he can do just the same. Larsen just tailing off the back end of Bourdais now, and he's got Van Gisbergen for company. And Makino now with a slow puncture, so he's going to have to limp his way back to pit lane, but luckily he's only a couple of corners away, and that's Ella Lloyd having to duck out the way. It is quite a ferocious pit entry here, and that has allowed one of the British drivers through, and at the same time Hansen gets through on 10 points, so Hansen up to 14. Larsen still being stalked by Van Gisbergen. It just seems that American car seems just a little bit lazy through some of the long corners compared to the New Zealand car behind. Covered in the all black livery, and that's Stuvik challenging the inside of Van Voor, so another position there for the Thai driver. And actually something must have happened there, because Larsen's managed to pull out quite a gap to Van Gisbergen now, as Dunn's having a look up the inside of De Resta, but unable to make that stick. Rasta's got through in the meantime on Pagano. But there is Dunn again, and Junkadea up into 4th position, so it looks like definitely an issue appearing for Van Gisbergen. On board now with Larsen, who's now 2 seconds ahead, and that's Van Gisbergen still going slowly, and Yamamoto's now through. And he's got a long train of cars and a world of pain ahead of him, as he's going to have to come to the pits. Didn't quite see any confirmation of what the issue is, but he has at the moment. But he's going to duck into pit lane, and that's caused a chain reaction there for Stuvik. And they were going free abreast at one point, and that's Dixon was trying to get through on Stuvik, but he also tried to get through on Van Voor at the same time, and he's going to make another stab at it into turn 2, but free abreast there into turn 1. But after all that, that's allowed Stuvik to scamper off 2 seconds up the road from Dixon now, into a slightly more comfortable 6th position, and is within close proximity of the Prix as well. Is the Thai driver, and there's smoke appearing there, and a lockup, I believe, there for Van Voor. No, there's definitely smoke coming out the end of that car, and so that's a failure there for the Belgian driver, and such a shame, because he was having a fairly good performance there, and it comes to nothing with Goosen, the teammate, who generally doesn't tend to make much effect in the team, it seems. So 0 points once again for Team Belgium, will be brought to the drawing board for next time out. But Van Voort still choosing to carry on, even though he's past pit lane. Here's Pagenaud, who has managed to get his way back up into 9th position now. And he's got Rast just ahead of him, but done up for company as well. So here's Van Voort finally pulling off. That has promoted Ella Lloyd and Hart into the top 15. On board with Larson. Over the line we go one more time to complete 10 laps. And actually, he's managed to pull in a little bit onto board A. It's now down to 1.8 seconds across the line. Okay, Younger there in 3rd position has got that 10-second penalty. Here's Lloyd for Wales going through turn 1 there. Currently in 14th position, he's got 10 Boyd just up the road from her. And the gap coming down, or staying the same in this first sector. Stuvik having a look down the inside of De Vries. Now I said that De Vries was going to be under pressure, but he's hanging it out round the outside, but Stuvik flexing his muscles, taking a position, and he's happy with that. De Vries not quite with the pace in this early phase, but that would suggest that he's running a heavier fuel load compared to the others. And as we saw in the earlier race in Div 2, running a little bit longer in this opening phase does pay dividends into the second half of the race, as we did find that those who pitted earlier had to deal with traffic as Hansen pops out and goes to take 11th position off of De Resta, and that's allowed Ten Voida on the back end of De Resta, but not quite close enough to mount a challenge into turn 2. He's managed to pull a 10th out on Larson, but Larson's doing pretty well to match the French driver up ahead, born in Le Mans. And here is Alex Lynn in the Team England car, subbing for James Collado, who's been our first driver in, I think, Grand Prix World Series history to be banned due to the new points system and accumulating too many points. And this is Ten Void going up the inside of De Resta now. De Resta got an issue now. He seems to be carrying on, so it just seems like he's having a bit of an off lap. Here's Max Hart coming through on Ella Lloyd, and up the inside he goes to take 14th position. He's now got De Resta just up ahead as well. Here is Yamada. As it stands, Yamamoto for Japan is on course for a podium, but it is still very early doors. And for those who watched the Div 2 race, you know, even with 3 laps remaining, a podium isn't guaranteed. And that's Doom going through done. Sorry, no, that's Hart going through on De Resta. So another position lost for the Scottish driver, who just seems to be plummeting backwards at the moment. Now has Ella Lloyd only 4 tenths behind. De Resta in all sorts of trouble now, as he's looking for the potential of not being in the points. But based on the pace and the pace that he's had in previous races, would suggest that he's going long in this first stanza of the race. Bourdais has responded again and has reopened that gap back to 2.1 seconds. But with Bourdais' pace and potentially Larsson's pace, it suggests to me that they're going to be going short. Previous race, it was around lap 14-15 we saw the first drivers come in for their scheduled pit stops. But that did put them in amongst quite a lot of traffic. So, across one more time, ticks off another lap to make 14 laps completed for the French driver. When will he be coming into pit? And here is Hart up the inside of Ten Voorde, and Ten Voorde making it a little bit more difficult for that move to be pulled off. Here's Rast, and he's got Pagenaud all over the back, and Pagenaud's got Dunn all over the back of him as well. So this is 8th, 9th and 10th position. Starting to pull his way through the field now, obviously recovering from that early incident with Youngadair, which, once again, I will remind you, landed him a 10-second penalty to Youngadair, so Bourdais still leading. Are we going to see him dive for the pits this time? No. So it seems like the field has seen what has happened in Div 2 and have decided, no, we're going to go a little bit longer with our strategy. And that's Lloyd trying to go around the outside of De Resta into the final corner, almost going off the track. Dunn becomes the first driver to pit. But based on where he is in the field, he is going to find himself in clean air when he comes out. Larsson still keeping the gap to Bourdais at that 2.1 seconds. Larsson, the driver that a lot of his fans believe is the best, most diverse driver in the world at the moment. Some arguing that he's potentially more diverse than Verstappen, although I think Verstappen's performances at the Nürburgring recently have put the kibosh on that. And Larsson pits, so first to blink, and Youngadair also pits. Bourdais carries on. So here's Newgarden up the inside of Alex Lynn, so another position gained there. A few other drivers, so you got Hart, Youngadair, and obviously Larsson, as we already said, coming into pit lane. That promotes a few other drivers. One of them being Newgarden into 13th position. But once again, as you can see from the top 15 list, None of those drivers who are pitted have come back out in amongst the top 15, and so they're going to have to battle their way through the field. They're not pitting yet, so Bourdais staying out a little bit longer is actually going to do a world of good. Although he was already leading, he's going to find himself essentially in an overcut position where he's most likely going to come back out with a larger lead once it comes to the end of the pit stop phase. Here is Sandy Stuvik in second position now, because he's just been promoted with Yamamoto pitting. Here's De Vries under pressure and being passed by Dixon into turn 1. So De Vries, the driver who, based on his pace, suggests that he's going long into his first stint. Lloyd pits as well, so she's pitted from a point scoring position. That's allowed Larson to come up into 15th, and he's got Jack Aitken to deal with, but also Lee Watanabe and Lynn and Evans, and the list pretty much goes on until they pit. Here is Dixon, usually the driver who's Mr. Consistent. No matter what's thrown at him, he somehow ends up towards the front come the end of the race. But him and Stuvik have quite a gap to Bourdais, who once again looks to be staying out for another lap. And Stuvik pits from second position. Dixon stays out and is promoted to second, and De Vries stays out as well. Here's Larson up the inside of one of the Thai drivers. So up into 12th position. Stuvik, Rast, Junkadea and the light Pagano all pit. That's allowed Larson to come up to 9th position now, some 30 seconds off the lead. He's now got a little bit of a gap there between himself and Alex Lynn. It is still Bourdais staying out for yet another lap, so the pace that he was showing, it was stellar considering he's able to carry on as long as he has done into this first stint, which for the likes of Larson and the rest of the field is not looking particularly promising, because he's going to have a lighter fuel load and fresher tyres when he pits, and so he's going to be absolutely rapid. Larson making up another position there. Actually, that was Newgarden going through into pit lane. Hansen also pits as well, so that's allowed Larson up into 7th. And Larson, stuck behind Alex Lynn there, he's going to go up the inside into turn 2, but would have wanted the job done by turn 1. That's lost him a little bit of time. He's still closed. Yeah, so he's lost over a second as a result of that through that first corner. Here is Bourdais staying out for another lap. So 20 laps completed for the French driver. He is catching up onto the back end of some traffic there, so I wouldn't be staying out too much longer. I would expect that he's going to be in within the next lap or two. Here is Dixon in second position. Ten Void is now pitted from 4th position. De Vries still staying out as we expected. is Yunkadea going through on Lee Watanabe. And as expected, the team calling for Bourdais to box his lap. Here's Yamamoto going up another position. Simon Pagenaud has set the fastest lap of the race. So Pagenaud on those fresh tyres, still showing that there is life in the old dog. But here is Van Gisbergen, who obviously was challenging Larson for second position earlier before he ran into some technical issues. Once again, didn't quite see what happened. And Bourdais pits from the lead. Dixon and De Vries continue on. So where is Bourdais going to filter out in comparison to Larson, who Larson has been putting in some good lap times, and he comes out just behind Larson. So Larson has managed to leapfrog Bourdais despite having to deal with traffic. So here is Larson, just over a second ahead of Bourdais, but it's going to be a tough job for the American driver to keep ahead of the hard-charging Frenchman who's on fresher tyres. Here is Dixon, the current race leader, and we'd expect to see him to pit sometime soon. And indeed he pits now, and I expect De Vries is probably going to pit as well. And indeed he does, so the two leaders pitting, which is allowing Larson and Bourdais to retake their positions, but it seems Larson actually getting a good exit onto the start-finish straight, and Bourdais not quite having an answer just yet, and that's Pagenaud going through on Hart. Aitken in the pit lane from 9th position for Team Scotland. So Dixon comes out in 8th position. De Vries has actually missed out big time as Hansen does a dive bomb into turn 1 on De Vries, who's still on the colder, or some cold tyres. I think he's just exited pit lane actually. Here is Bourdais all over the back end of Larson. Again, you can see just there how Bourdais has so much more cornering speed, but Larson, and Bourdais goes up the inside of Larson. Now, Larson looks as though he's got better straight line speed. Is he going to be close enough to mount a challenge in turn 1? No, I don't think he is. But he's going to have a look has a look up the inside of turn 1, but not quite committed enough, and that's actually allowed Bourdais to pull out nearly a second now. So I think that's pretty much, for now, race over for the lead, as Bourdais has got 1.2 seconds, but anything can happen, and it quite often usually does. Here's Yunkadea in 3rd position. Yamamoto not too far behind, so he will be promoted, and so will Studwick at this rate. So Larson doesn't really need to worry about anyone behind, as I said earlier, Younger Dare with the 10-second penalty, as Dixon, as expected, is on his way through the field. He's just passed Dunn, he's now got Van Gisbergen to deal with. And he's quick to also dispatch his teammate there. And up into 6th position is the New Zealand driver. I think as it stands, we're going to be seeing Van Gisbergen starting to struggle on those tyres now, obviously having to pit a lot earlier than he would have wanted to. But here is Bourdais starting to produce quite a commanding advantage. It's now up to 3.5 seconds. Here's Yogadea, 6 seconds off Bourdais. But more importantly, only 4 seconds ahead of Yamamoto. So here is Larson being chased down, and this is free abreast almost going into turn 2. That's Pagenaud going up the inside of Rast, and De Vries was also trying to get in the action as well. De Vries now with those tyres up to temperature, and he's also starting to make moves through the field, although he did lose out quite a bit compared to Dixon. And here's Stuvik down the inside of Yamamoto. So that is the net 3rd position. On board with our race leader. The gap now over 5 seconds. Here's De Vries making up another position, or trying to at least, on Ras. And here is Newgarden trying to make some moves as well. So Newgarden on the back end of 10 Void. He didn't quite manage to make the move stick into turn 1, but he has managed to do so into turn 2. Here's Goosen being overtaken by Andre Lotterer. And he's pretty much telling everyone that we all know that he's really slow at the moment. Is René Rast under pressure by De Vries and manages to get through on Pagenaud, and that's managed to wrong foot Pagenaud and allow De Vries through up into 11th position. So Pagenaud, who still has the fastest lap by the way, has obviously burnt through the best part of his tyres earlier on in this stint, and some of the drivers who pitted later, particularly De Vries, managing to capitalise on that now. So the next target on Rast's radar is Hart. Here's Nick de Vries coming through on René Rast. And that is 10th position for the Dutchman, who now sets about going after Hart. But Rast thought about having another look into turn 2. And almost straight away, de Vries already thinking about a move on Hart, and then there's going to be his Hart's teammate Dunn up the road. Dunn has managed to catch up onto the back of Van Gisbergen now, and Dixon actually is caught up onto the back of Yamamoto. So the hard charging Dixon, I think with the pace he's got, with the laps remaining, I think is going to be on course for a podium. And as we say that, Dixon goes through on Yamamoto. So here is Nick de Vries tucked up behind the Irishman. He's going to pop out into turn 1 because it's not quite close enough. And that is actually going to not quite. It's affected his run into turn 2, so that's going to pretty much mean another lap, or half a lap, stuck behind the Irishman. And that is Lee Watanabe going through on Lloyd. So Lloyd, who had a fairly strong showing in the first part of the race, was up into the points, struggling a bit in this second half of the race. But here's Larson, there's Junkadale. Obviously don't quite need to completely ignore him, but again, with that 10-second penalty, it stands with Stuvik in third position, but with a hard charging Dixon, as I said earlier, closing in. The gap is now under 2 seconds between Stuvik and Dixon. And actually, depending on the pace advantage of Dixon, he could well find himself catching and passing Junkadale on track anyway. But battles raging on further down the field. Bourdais still extending that lead, is now 9.5 seconds. So we are midway through lap 31 and 38. There. As you can see in the background, it's Stuvik and Dixon. And Dixon still reeling off the lap times to catch onto the back of Stuvik. It's less than a second now between the pair of them. Driver, hold on. Ahead of the highly experienced New Zealand driver, and this is Paul de Resta under pressure there from Elfyn Evans there. So Elfyn Evans up to 16th. And it would appear that although we thought de Resta was going to be going long into the race and having a good second half of the race, it just appears that Team Scotland are struggling for pace during the race, with Aitken in at 19th as well, so no points at the moment for Team Scotland. There is Carl Larson, barring any issues, comfortably in second position. His teammate Newgarden has managed to recover to 13th so far and is catching up onto the back of Pagenaud. So it is forecast at the moment, Yonkadera's penalty will be in 6th position, so it's looking at Stuvik, Dixon and Yamamoto to be promoted one place. So Yonkadera having to put the hammer down. Yamamoto struggling a little bit in the latter stages of this race. Here is Bourdais now with over 10 seconds to Larson, and it will probably be even further as they come across to complete lap 33. Indeed, it is, as we still wait for Larson to come over the start-finish line. Actually, it's not over 10 seconds, it's 9.9. And Dixon appears to have actually stalled out a little bit in his attack on Stuvik. It's still just under a second between the pair of them, but based on the tyre advantage that he's got over Stuvik, I would expect to have seen him already passed by now. But still 4 laps remaining after this one. Van Gisbergen still ahead of Dunn, and De Vries not quite making the inroads into Dunn that we thought he would be. But here is Renaud Rast under pressure there from Pagenaud, so Pagenaud up into the 11th there. Actually, there's Hart coming back again at De Vries, so he's taken 9th place back off De Vries now. What's going on with De Vries? Who was one of the last to pit and is on far fresher tyres than most of the field. But with 4 laps remaining, not slowed up completely, so not an issue for De Vries, but it seems that the late race pace that we thought he would have is not really showing. And it seems that De Vries getting quite hot-headed in the car. He's not happy with that. Meanwhile, as you can see just ahead, Dunn right on the back of Van Gisbergen. Here's Yonkadera. Obviously the gap that we're looking out for is the gap between himself and Yamamoto. Still stands, Yamamoto is within that 10-second bubble. Stuvik will be 3rd. Dixon still not able to, very much like the Freeze, has stalled out a little bit in this late race charge. So across the line we go to complete lap 35 and 38. Gap between Bourdais and Larson, 10.8 seconds. Larson has 3.2 seconds to Juncadeo. Not that Larson is particularly worried about that. Yamamoto still able to stay within the time he needs to stay to gain another position. Stuvik still holding on to what will be third position ahead of Dixon, with the gap still at 9/10 between the pair of them. So on the penultimate lap we currently are. Bourdais still with, again, he's trying to eke it out to 11 seconds now, as he is catching on to the back of what I think is Goosen. Don't think he's quite quick enough. He starts the last lap of the race. Here is Carl Larson again in a comfortable second position. Stands will be 6th position. And Stewart still holding on to that, what will be 3rd from Dixon. Dixon only managing to close into 8/10 now, as Bourdais has already entered the final sector and he is rounding the final corner. And out of the curve Ray Campos, down the start-finish straight, it is Sebastian Bourdais who wins here in Valencia for the Division 1 feature race. And a great, magnificent performance from the Frenchman. Larson finishes second, another good outing from the American driver. Juncadeo crosses the line 3rd on the road, but will find himself back in 6th position. Stuvik manages to get a podium for Thailand, holding that 3rd place ahead of Dixon. And Yamamoto rounding out the top 5. Van Gisbergen finishing in 7th with Dunn in 8th, not managing to overcome the all-black driver of Van Gisbergen. Aitken across the line here is Lloyd McKenna, obviously with an early race issue, and Lotterer again struggling in that Team Germany car to be essentially the last driver classified across the line, with Goosen with the race ban. But here is Goosen, final driver across the line. But here we go, race over, and it is the Frenchman Sebastian Bourdais who wins here in Valencia. Also with the pole position, Simon Pagenaud with the fastest lap though, Kyle Larson second, Sandy Stuvik third, Scott Dixon fourth, Yamamoto fifth, Juncker sixth, Van Gisbergen seventh, Dunn in eighth, Hart in ninth, Nick de Vries in 10th, Joseph Newgarden managing to recover back to 11th position, with Simon Pagenaud in 12th, and it was Rass in 13th, Hansen in 14th, and Tim Void takes the final point in 15th, Elvin Evans in 16th, Lee Watton Varagu in 17th, with Paul de Resta and Aitken both together 18th and 19th. Not the best of showings from Team Scotland. Ella Lloyd, after having a promising start to the race, ended up in 20th position, with Alex Lynn in 21st, Makino in 22nd, Lotterer last across the line in 23rd, with Dries van Voor with that engine issue, Palou with the accident after being taken out by Goosen, and obviously Goosen being disqualified. So after another great race, it is finally back over to Chris.
Yes, well, congratulations to France for winning in Spain, and commiserations for Spain for not doing so well here. It's a bit of a switch, actually, wasn't it, from Spain winning in France and then France winning in Spain. Quite cool, that is. But after this round, let's have a look at what it does to the driver standings. If we see now, Philip Hansen's gap has now shrunk. He is now just 2 ahead of Scott Dixon in second place. Naoki Yamamoto keeps putting in these great performances week in, week out in third, 12 behind. Kyle Larson in fourth. Then we've got Alex Palou. He could have done better this weekend, but then threw no fault of his own, to be fair. Sebastian Bourdais at 37 points. Shane Gisberg in 30. Joseph Newgarden also at 30 points. Sandy Stuvik at 29. Jack Aitken on 29 points. Daniel Juncker on 28 points. Nick de Vries on 27, and Paul de Resta on 25. And then looking into 14th place, we have Simon Pagenaud with 23 points. They've got René Rast and Andre Lotte, both the Germany cars there, close proximity. And then to the 2 Irish cars of Dunn and Hart behind them, they've got James Collado, obviously missed this weekend due to disqualification, and then Alfred Evans and Ella Lloyd, both on 9 and 6 points respectively. Tadasuke Makino for 5 points, bit lacklustre compared to his teammate. Then we have Dries van Tor on 5, Larry Tempordo with 3, Mark Housens with 1, Nathan Lee Watanabe with 1, and then the 2 drivers who are left on 0 points are Alex Lynn and Vanilla X. But then how does that all translate for the nation standings? Well, New Zealand are on top now with 15 points gap to the United States of America. England now fall to 3rd place, with Spain on 67, so very close between those two. France on 60 with a good performance today. We've got Scotland, which are on 54, Japan on 51, Germany on 43, both the Thailand and the Netherlands on 30 points. We've got Ireland on 27, Wales on 15, and then last place Belgium with 6. That makes it 3 rounds out of 15 complete, and it's very special now because the teams have got all their money that they've collected from the sprints and the features. They can now apply that money and do things like fixing the reliability of their cars. They can increase the downforce that the cars can create. They can put power in. It'll all depend on what routes they want to take looking forward at what the next tracks are going to be. And the next track is going to be for round 4 at the Sachsenring in Germany. Same day, same time, in a fortnight's time. Next week there should be some racing. It's either going to be the Grand Prix World Series at Poznan, or it's going to be the finale of the 1991 season in Adelaide. But there's definitely action in 2 weeks. But again, thank you so much for watching this. I have been your host, Chris Kavaney. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator, and this is the Retro Racing Managers League. Signing off.